It was an ordinary morning at Lincoln High until something shocking happened. Mr. Thomas Harris, the school's elderly, dedicated janitor, was suddenly fired after 30 years of service. He was treated as if he had no value, no pension, no farewell, just a cold decision. Mr. Harris stood frozen in the principal's office, his ears ringing from the words about restructuring and operational efficiency. The initial shock quickly gave way to a cold dread creeping into his chest. What would he do now? At his age, who would hire him? Images of unpaid bills, of the small house needing repairs flashed through his mind. Students whispered, teachers looked away, and Principal Whitaker walked off like nothing had happened. But no one knew this cruel decision would trigger something unbelievable. The very next day, as the students arrived, a roaring engine sound echoed through the sky. A billionaire's helicopter landed right on the school's front lawn. Windows rattled, mouths dropped in astonishment. Why was he here? And what did this have to do with Mr. Harris? The morning sun cast a golden hue over Lincoln High as students rushed through the gates, chatting about their weekend plans. Everything seemed normal until the news spread like wildfire. Mr. Harris, the janitor who had been part of the school for as long as anyone could remember, was gone. Not retired, not transferred, just fired, without warning. Some students overheard teachers whispering about it in the break room. Others saw Principal Whitaker walking through the halls unfazed, but the students who cared knew something was wrong. Mr. Harris was not just a janitor. He was the man who stayed late to clean up after events, who fixed jammed lockers, who sometimes gave extra lunch money when students forgot theirs. Mia remembered ninth grade when she was being bullied and hid crying in the restroom. It was Mr. Harris who happened to find her. He didn't ask many questions, just quietly handed her a tissue and said simply, "Tomorrow will be different, young lady." Those words, along with his kind smile, had helped her through that difficult time. To them, he was more than an employee. He was part of the Lincoln High family. No official announcement was made, no appreciation post on the school's website, just silence. Some students tried asking the staff, but no one wanted to talk. The only clue was that the principal had called him into his office the day before, and after a short meeting, he left carrying only a small box of his belongings. It was as if 3 decades of service had been erased in an instant. Mia, a junior who had known Mr. Harris since elementary school, felt her stomach knot as she walked past his usual workstation near the cafeteria. It was empty, his name tag gone. She turned to Oliver, her best friend, and whispered, "This isn't right. He didn't deserve this." Oliver sighed, shaking his head. "I heard it was about money. The school is making cuts, and they said he was too old to keep up with the work." Mia clenched her fists. "That's ridiculous. He worked harder than anyone." As the day dragged on, whispers turned into rumors. Some said he had been replaced by a younger worker willing to do the job for less. Others insisted he had argued with the principal over unfair treatment. Whatever the reason, one thing was certain. Something about this felt deeply wrong, but no one could have guessed what was coming next. The following morning, just as students began arriving, a sound unlike anything they had ever heard filled the air. A low, rumbling roar growing louder by the second. Everyone looked up. A helicopter, a massive, sleek, black helicopter, was descending right onto the school's front lawn. The ground shook slightly as it touched down. Teachers rushed outside. Principal Whitaker, who had just stepped out of his office, froze mid-step. As the helicopter doors slowly opened, everyone held their breath. Who was inside? Why were they here? The entire school stood still. Students clutched their backpacks, shielding their eyes from the dust kicked up by the powerful blades. Teachers whispered among themselves, their faces tight with confusion. Principal Whitaker straightened his tie, masking his unease with a forced air of authority. No one had expected this. Lincoln High had never seen anything like it. As the helicopter's blades slowed, the tension grew unbearable. Then the door opened. A man in an expensive charcoal suit stepped out, his polished shoes gleaming in the sunlight. He was tall, commanding, and unmistakably wealthy. His presence alone radiated power. He adjusted his gold cufflinks before stepping onto the grass, surveying the stunned crowd with sharp, calculating eyes. News of Thomas Harris's dismissal had reached Marcus Thorne faster than Whitaker could have imagined, thanks to an old discreet contact still working in the district office. Thorne hadn't hesitated to cancel an important meeting to come here immediately. Mia stood frozen near the front steps, gripping Oliver's arm. "Who is that?" she whispered. Oliver shook his head, his jaw clenched. "No idea, but this is serious." The man's gaze locked onto Principal Whitaker, who instinctively straightened his posture. Before anyone could ask questions, the man spoke, his voice deep and authoritative. "Where is he?" Principal Whitaker frowned, attempting to regain control. "I'm sorry, but who are you and what is your business here?" The man ignored his question, his expression darkening as he took a step closer. "Where is he?" His voice carried a weight that made even the toughest teachers flinch. A nervous hush fell over the crowd. The principal hesitated, then forced a stiff smile. "Sir, I don't know who you are referring to." The man exhaled sharply, his patience thinning. "Mr. Harris, where is he?" Gasps rippled through the students. Mia's heart pounded. This was about Mr. Harris. Principal Whitaker's face paled slightly, but he quickly recovered. "Mr. Harris is no longer employed here," he said, his voice clipped. "If this is about a job reference, I'm afraid you'll have to—" The man raised a hand, cutting him off. "I know he's no longer here. That's why I'm asking. Where can I find him?" The principal hesitated again, but before he could respond, another voice rang out. "He lives on Maple Street." All heads turned toward a freshman standing near the front doors. He looked nervous but determined. "I saw him packing up yesterday. He told me he was heading home to Maple Street." The billionaire turned back to Principal Whitaker, his jaw tight. "Thank you," he said, not to the principal, but to the student. Without another word, he turned back toward the helicopter. Mia felt a surge of urgency. She had to know what was happening. Without thinking, she grabbed Oliver's wrist. "Come on," she whispered. He barely had time to react before she pulled him forward, slipping through the stunned crowd. She had no idea who this man was or why he was looking for Mr. Harris, but she was going to find out. As the helicopter door swung open once more, the billionaire stepped inside. Just before the doors closed, Mia and Oliver made a split-second decision. They jumped in. The moment Mia and Oliver landed inside the luxurious helicopter, their hearts pounded like a drumline. The billionaire Marcus Thorne barely had time to register their presence before the pilot's voice crackled through the intercom. "Sir, we're clear for takeoff." The doors sealed shut, muffling the panicked voices still watching from the school's front lawn. Then with a sudden jolt, the aircraft lifted off. Mia gripped the nearest seat, her breath shallow. Oliver, wide-eyed, muttered, "What did we just do?" Marcus Thorne turned his sharp gaze on them. For a long moment he simply stared. his expression unreadable. Then slowly, he adjusted the cuffs of his expensive suit. You have 5 seconds to explain why you are in my helicopter before I have you drop back at your school. Mia swallowed hard, her mind racing. We want to know why you're looking for Mr. Harris. Thorne raised an eyebrow. And what makes you think that's any of your concern? Oliver, still catching his breath, managed to say, because he mattered to us. Unlike your friend Principal Whitaker, we actually care what happens to him. A flicker of something crossed Thorne's face. Surprise, maybe even approval, but it vanished just as quickly. He studied them for another moment before exhaling. Fine. You want the truth? Then listen carefully. He turned toward the window, his gaze distant. I was 14 when I met Thomas Harris. It was my first job. My family had lost everything, and I had no one looking out for me. But Harris did. He gave me work at his brother's auto shop, taught me how to fix engines, taught me how to survive when the world turns its back on you. He didn't just teach me about machines. He taught me about honesty, about doing a job well, even when no one was watching. And when my own school treated me like I was nothing, he made sure I never believed that. Mia's chest tightened. She had always known Mr. Harris was kind, but she had never imagined this. Thorne continued, his voice quieter now. That man is the reason I'm standing here today. And now, after everything he has done, he gets tossed aside like garbage. His jaw clenched. Not on my watch. Oliver shook his head in disbelief. You knew him when you were a kid? Thorne nodded. His kindness saved my life. Now I'm going to return the favor. Mia leaned forward. How? What are you going to do? Thorne smirked. Watch and see. The helicopter dipped slightly as it neared a small, slightly run-down house on Maple Street. The lawn was overgrown, the paint peeling. A lone figure sat on the porch, staring at the ground. Even from this height, Mia recognized him immediately. Mr. Harris. The helicopter touched down in the empty lot across the street. As soon as the doors opened, Thorne stepped out purposefully, his polished shoes crunching on the gravel. Mia and Oliver followed, their pulses racing. Mr. Harris looked up, his tired eyes widening as he took in the sight before him. No, he whispered, standing up. It can't be. Thorne stepped closer, his voice steady. It's been a long time, old friend. Emotion flickered across Mr. Harris's face. Disbelief, relief, and something else. Something deeper. Thorne reached into his pocket, pulling out a folded document. He held it out. Pack your bags, Harris. You're coming with me. Mr. Harris hesitated, staring at the document in Thorne's hand. His fingers twitched slightly, but he didn't reach for it. His tired eyes shifted between the young man standing before him and the two teenagers watching in silence. The weight of the years he had spent struggling seemed to press down on him all at once. I don't understand, Mr. Harris finally said, his voice rough from years of exhaustion. Why are you here? Thorne's expression softened just slightly, though his commanding presence remained. Because you never turned your back on me, and I won't turn my back on you. Mia and Oliver exchanged glances. The words hung in the air, thick with emotion. Mr. Harris shook his head slowly, rubbing his forehead as if trying to wake himself from a dream. You don't owe me anything, he said, barely above a whisper. Thorne let out a short laugh, though there was no humor in it. That's where you're wrong. When no one saw anything in me, you did. I was just a kid with nothing, and you gave me a chance. His grip tightened on the papers. So, I'm here to give you one. Mr. Harris exhaled shakily. He looked down at his calloused hands, hands that had scrubbed floors and carried trash bags for longer than he cared to remember. He had accepted his fate long ago, accepted that people like him didn't get second chances. A flicker of doubt crossed his mind. Could this be real? Could he handle this new job? Or was this just momentary pity? Yet here was proof that maybe he had been wrong. Oliver stepped forward, his voice firmer than before. Mr. Harris, we saw what they did to you. The way they treated you was disgusting. They thought you were invisible, but you're not. Mia nodded, her voice filled with determination. And now they're about to see just how wrong they were. Thorne extended the papers again, this time with more urgency. This is a contract, a job offer, a new life. Mr. Harris hesitated, his breath caught in his throat. A job? Thorne nodded. Not just any job, a position in my company. You've always been more than a janitor, Harris. You taught me values, discipline, and resilience. You kept me from falling apart when I had nothing left. I need people like you on my team. Mr. Harris looked down at the document, his hands trembling as he reached out, fingers brushing against the paper. For years, he had accepted the idea that no one would ever look out for him. But now, standing in front of someone who hadn't forgotten him, pushing aside his earlier doubts, something inside him shifted. His voice cracked. I don't know what to say. Thorne placed a hand on his shoulder. Say yes. Tears welled up in Mr. Harris's eyes. He had spent so long being overlooked, so long believing that kindness was something he gave, not something he received. But now, for the first time in years, he felt seen. Finally, he took a deep breath and nodded. Yes. Mia and Oliver grinned, their relief evident. Thorne smirked. Good. Now let's get out of here. As they turned toward the helicopter, none of them noticed a car parked at the end of the street. Inside, Principal Whitaker sat gripping his steering wheel, his face twisted in fury as he watched everything unfold. As Mr. Harris stepped toward the helicopter, the wind from its spinning blades whipped around him, but he barely noticed. His heart pounded, his mind still trying to process the impossible turn his life had just taken. He had walked out of the school a broken man, humiliated and discarded, but now he was walking towards something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Mia and Oliver followed closely, their excitement barely contained. They had seen the despair in Mr. Harris's eyes when he had been thrown out, and now they were witnessing the moment he was finally being given the respect he deserved. Thorne turned slightly, motioning toward the pilot, who nodded in response. We've got places to be. His voice was casual, but there was something sharp in his eyes, like a man who knew exactly what he was doing. Just as Mr. Harris reached the door of the helicopter, a voice cut through the roaring wind. Wait! They all turned. Principal Whitaker was storming toward them, his face flushed red with anger. His polished shoes crunched against the pavement as he marched forward with the confidence of a man who believed he still had control. His suit was slightly wrinkled, as if he had been sitting in his car for too long, watching, waiting. Thorne's expression didn't change, but Mia and Oliver stiffened. Mr. Harris swallowed hard, his old instincts kicking in. He had spent years shrinking himself, avoiding conflict, accepting whatever was thrown his way. Not this time. Principal Whitaker stopped a few feet away, his chest heaving. This is ridiculous. Mr. Harris, you can't just leave like this. You have responsibilities. Thorne let out a slow, amused exhale. Responsibilities? His voice was smooth, unbothered. Like scrubbing floors for a school that tossed him out like trash? Whitaker's jaw tightened. That was a misunderstanding. Mia scoffed. A misunderstanding? You humiliated him in front of everyone? The principal's gaze flickered to Thorne, realizing for the first time just how much power stood in front of him. His eyes darted to the helicopter, the luxury, the sheer wealth on display. He swallowed hard. Look, he tried again, his voice softer now, more calculated. There's no need for hostility. Mr. Harris, if money is an issue, I'm sure we can. Thorne's laugh was cold. You think this is about money? He stepped forward, towering over the principal. You had a good man working for you, a man who dedicated years of his life to this place, to these kids. And when you decided he was no longer useful, you threw him out without a second thought. Whitaker's eyes darted between them, searching for an escape. I was just doing what I thought was best for the school. Thorne smirked. And I'm doing what's best for Mr. Harris. Silence hung between them. For the first time, Principal Whitaker looked unsure, out of his depth. He had spent years making decisions without consequences, stepping over people he deemed unimportant. But now he was face to face with someone who could not be ignored, someone who had the power to expose him, to ruin him. Mr. Harris, who had remained silent through it all, finally spoke. I'm done being invisible. His voice was steady, firm in a way it hadn't been in years. He met Whitaker's gaze directly. You won't control me anymore. Whitaker opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, Thorne turned toward the helicopter. We're done here. Mia and Oliver grinned, stepping into the helicopter beside Mr. Harris. Thorne followed, pausing just long enough to give Whitaker one last glance. Enjoy your power while you still have it. And with that, the door shut, and the helicopter lifted off, leaving Principal Whitaker standing alone, watching as everything he had tried to control slipped right through his fingers. As soon as the helicopter was out of sight, a buzz started around the schoolyard. The earlier whispers now turned into open discussion. A few teachers looked at Whitaker with unconcealed disapproval. He turned on his heel, walking quickly back to his office, keenly feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes on him. As the helicopter soared into the sky, Mr. Harris looked down at the school that had once been his entire world. The tiny figures of students and staff were scattered below, watching in disbelief. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of years of struggle finally lifting off his shoulders. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't just surviving, he was free. Mia and Oliver sat across from him, their eyes gleaming with excitement. Thorne, sitting calmly beside them, tapped a few buttons on his phone before slipping it into his pocket. He turned his attention back to Mr. Harris, studying the elderly janitor with a thoughtful expression. You've spent years working for a system that never valued you, Thorne said. Tell me, if you had the chance to do anything, absolutely anything, what would it be? Mr. Harris hesitated. No one had ever asked him that before. His whole life had been spent taking whatever was handed to him, never daring to dream beyond what was necessary to survive. He glanced at Mia and Oliver, who nodded encouragingly. I always wanted to teach, Mr. Harris admitted finally. I love working with kids, helping them learn, showing them that they're capable of more than they think. His voice grew stronger as he spoke, as if the dream had been buried so deep inside him that he had almost forgotten it existed. Thorne's lips curled into a small smile. Then that's exactly what you're going to do. Mr. Harris blinked. I don't understand. Thorne leaned back, watching the clouds pass by through the window. I'm opening a school focused on unlocking true potential, not just grades, especially for kids from disadvantaged backgrounds. A place where kids from all backgrounds get a fair chance, where no one is discarded because of their status. And I want you to be a part of it. Mia gasped. Oliver's jaw dropped. Mr. Harris just stared, his mind struggling to keep up. You want me to work at your school? Not just work there, Thorne corrected. I want you to help build it, shape it, make it into something no other school has ever been. You've spent your life seeing the flaws in the system from a unique perspective. Now I'm giving you the chance to fix them. Tears welled in Mr. Harris's eyes again, but this time they weren't from humiliation or despair. They were from something else, something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. By the time the helicopter landed at a massive estate, Mr. Harris was still in a daze. The estate was breathtaking, stretching as far as the eye could see. But what caught his attention the most was the large construction site in the distance. Thorne gestured toward it. That's where it all begins. Mr. Harris, Mia, and Oliver followed him inside, where an entire team of professionals was waiting. Thorne introduced him to architects, educators, and planners. Every single one of them greeted Mr. Harris with respect, listening intently as Thorne explained his vision. This is Mr. Harris, he said. He's going to be one of the key figures in making this school a reality. The room erupted in applause. While looking over preliminary designs for a common area, Mr. Harris hesitantly spoke up. I noticed student traffic during lunch breaks often got bottlenecked in narrow corners like this at the old school. Perhaps we could widen this area slightly and add some seating here to give the kids more comfortable space to relax. The lead architect looked at Mr. Harris in surprise, then nodded in agreement. That's a very practical observation, Mr. Harris. Thank you. Mr. Harris swallowed hard, his hands trembling, but a warm sense of pride began to bloom. Meanwhile, at Lincoln High, Principal Whitaker sat alone in his empty office, the phone ringing incessantly. The caller ID read Superintendent. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, knowing the storm was just beginning. News of Thorne's arrival and the new school project had already begun spreading, and parents were already questioning his leadership. He clenched his fists, knowing deep down that he had made a mistake, one that he would never be able to fix. And Mr. Harris, he closed his eyes, letting the cool evening air wash over him on the grounds of the construction site. He was no longer a forgotten janitor. He was a man with purpose, a builder of the future, and his story was just beginning.